Everything is Awesome is part of Courts and Parts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelin Friends, and Podstalgic at courtsandparts.com.
Awesome.
Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. 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 That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. It is a beautiful October morning over here in the States. It is summer 2, we're calling it, because it's still 80 degrees, 85 degrees, and we are not getting that hoodie weather quite yet, which is a little disappointing. It's one of these early morning interviews. Normally I swap out the beer for coffee, but because it's a holiday for me, I'm still enjoying a nice 9:30 a.m. beer. This is Everything is Awesome. Like I said, you can find us on Twitter at RealAwesomePod, Facebook.com/RealAwesomePod. You can give us a call at 267-223-4965, or email us at awesome@crudehammerstudios.com. And of course, when you're listening to us on iTunes, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a review and rating if you don't mind. 5 stars helps us out so much that more people listen to this show, and it just takes a second of your time. This week's guest is such a trooper. I believe we've been working on scheduling for well over a month, and he is a musician from somewhere across the ponds. Normally I do a little bit of research to even get that part, and I actually did not. So as you guys know, I go into these totally blind. Please welcome to the show, Steven Vagovics. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Welcome to the show, Steve.
It's a great honor to be on your show. Thank you.
Not a problem. Glad you could make time to do it. I know it's so. Where exactly are you from? Because I know that we have. It's probably about 3:30 your time.
Yeah, it's about 3:30 p.m. right now.
So where are you? Because I'm in my morning hours in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Whereabout are you located?
Yeah, I'm from Bratislava, Slovakia.
Okay. And you're a musician. Do you want to get into? I like to get into the origin of people's things. So where, when, and what did made you want to become a musician? What was that thing?
Well, I grew up on Queen music, so it was one of my first inspirations. My father is a musician too. He works at the Slovakian Philharmonic Orchestra, so he was a great inspiration for me. And I decided to try out and pursue my own music career by making my first debut album called Autumn's Fall.
And is that recent, or is that when a couple years ago when you first started out?
Well, it's been released in 2015, but it's just been today that the remaster came out, the 2017 remaster. So it's quite a recent work.
Now, I don't know, as an American, as a typical American, I'm not, and actually this is probably more so not being a typical American. I'm just not a big music guy. I'm more of a talk radio. I like listening to sports talk radio. I like listening to podcasts, obviously. And I'll listen to music like every now and then in the background. So what's the, and I don't know if you even know this, but what is like the major difference of doing music where you're from? Is there any difference doing music out there versus what you hear that comes from the States or from England or something like that?
Well, I think it's quite different because the audience is very different in Slovakia than in the US or in the UK. I mean, people in Slovakia are very difficult to impress, so you have to try out really hard. and they are usually not very keen on new music. And there are also much less opportunities in Slovakia than, let's say, in the US.
Mhm.
So that's why I would like to come to the UK or the US to pursue my career further.
Now, I don't. So I'm assuming you're more of a young guy. So did you grow up in like the digital age of music?
I can remember playing with cassette tapes when I was a little
Okay.
guy,
Okay.
but I think more or less MP3s were quite new when I was about 5 years old around here.
Okay.
So I guess I was born very near to the digital age, if not in the digital age.
So does that make it any easier, being that you're not from like a I guess a bigger country that would have more opportunities? Does it make it easier, being able to promote your stuff online and to just kind of distribute through iTunes and Spotify or any other digital means? Does it make it any easier?
I wouldn't say so, really, because mainly uh, you still need to use the distribution services just like in the US, and there's the limitation you can't really do a tour in Slovakia.
Hmm.
You can only do these things, and I would really much appreciate a record deal from a record label, but it's very limited here in Slovakia when it comes to music opportunities, so it's quite difficult, I would say. I wouldn't say it's easier, it's maybe even more difficult than in the US or in the UK.
So when you're so is all your stuff kind of like in studio, or do you get opportunities to go to over here in the states, and specifically in Philadelphia? There's there's music venues that are very unsigned, independent. I like to call them independent bands because to me they're just as good, if not better, than a lot of your mainstream bands. And there's just some of them are unsigned by choice, some of them are unsigned because they're local. But regardless, there's a lot. We have Philadelphia's a pretty good creative community, so there are some venues that are just straight up music venues that cater to independent artists. There's also a lot of bars that will have like a band or two in for the night. Is there any opportunities like that?
Yeah, there are a few bars in here in Bratislava, but it's quite difficult to book them because you have to use an external site such as Reverb Nation, and their spots are quite limited for the new bands. So it's quite difficult to book the venues around here, and the independent music scene, it's not very strong in Slovakia. Usually only have people who listen to drum and bass, electro, and maybe some mainstream artists.
So, what genre do you do in the music scene?
Well, one of my main influences are bands like Coldplay, Radiohead, and the Beatles. So I would say it's like an alternative rock or adult
Okay.
contemporary.
And is it just you doing all the different instruments, or is it you and a couple guys?
It's mainly just me. Sometimes I call out a guest to my recordings. For example, on the song Wonderful Day, there is a saxophone solo by Nathaniel Matson from the US. He did a great job, so I'm very proud of having him as a feature on that track. But I do all the other instruments by myself, usually at home.
So that's interesting. Is I mean that has to, and again you have kind of grown up in this digital age, this social media, internet age. Do you often look for collaborations outside of your home country? Because I would just imagine that from the sounds of it, it would probably be easier to collaborate with somebody even if it's across the computer and just shooting emails back and forth. It would be easier to do that than finding someone local, almost.
Yes, it's quite easier, but sometimes the personal collaboration works out the best. For example, for my song called Sing for Paris, I did a collaboration with one of my friends called Ivana Jelinkova. She's a Slovakian too. So it was a great experience, and I would really recommend to the other artists as well to try out some collaborations, either with their friends or even some new people who are playing some interesting music and who can uh, develop an interesting record with you.
And because I have a couple musician friends, and some of them, they're part of a band. Some of them do, like you, they kind of are a one man person. Um, and you're doing it all from your home, so you're not in a traditional studio. What are like the complications you run into as basically a one man band, and you're also recording in a home studio versus the comfort of an actual studio?
Well, I can imagine that it's much easier to work with an actual producer, a music producer. And one of the main complications you can encounter when you record at home is the audio latency. Because when you create a backing track for your song, let's say that you record drums first, and then when you record a guitar over it, there is a latency going on, so the instrumental tracks are going out of sync, and this is a very harsh situation you can face at recording because it sounds like a band which hasn't rehearsed much. It sounds
Okay.
broken. Yes.
Now, is that something that through the magic of editing you can fix, or do you have to re-record the whole thing, just the one part?
Well, it depends on whether you make mistakes or not. It's easily fixable by the editing tools, but it's usually that harsh that you have to re-record the entire track from the scratch, because when there is a huge latency going on, it just doesn't let you finish the track, so you have to re-record some parts to make it sound right.
Gotcha. So it's almost you're piecemealing it together, not only from instrument to instrument, but within that same instrument, you have to piece it together
Yes, it's
to get the
basically
sound
like
right.
a jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, okay. Uh, so I know. So I as for me, I'm not a musician, but something that I find that's pretty common between all the musicians I've talked to in the past, authors, actors, and whatnot, is that pretty early on in life is that it was the thing that you're doing was an escape from whatever's going on in your life. Was that what it was like for you? Was performing music, whether it was just for yourself or for a local bar, or I guess when you're younger, it would probably more be like I don't know. For us, we have a couple churches that do music events or community centers or stuff like that. Was that like a release and escapism for you?
Yeah, I think that music is always some kind of an escape from reality, because it's recently I've heard a statement that everything you do out of joy is a kind of meditation. I think it's an interesting thought, and it certainly applies to music because you have to use both of your hemispheres when you're playing. It's basically a relaxation for your brain when you play an instrument. So I guess that music performances and playing an instrument in general is always some kind of escape from your current problems in reality, and it just makes you a joyful experience to play an instrument. So I guess it's always an escape from reality.
Now, when you're sitting in your home studio having to record, 3 or 4 different instruments, does it feel like an escape, or does it feel like a just a big chaotic mess?
Actually, usually both, because you can play however good you want, but there's always the computer thing. The software can crash very easily, and you have to start over, and then you have to fix those syncing issues I've mentioned earlier, that audio latency. There are a lot of obstacles when you do a home recording, but it's easily manageable when you find some shortcuts to doing it. So it's quite okay eventually, but you have to learn it the hard way through experience.
Now, on top of all the instruments, are you also doing the vocals, or do you collaborate with others for that side of it?
Uh, I do the vocals as well, but like I mentioned earlier, I have, well, actually, it's just one track so far, which has been a collaboration with my friend Ivana Jelinkova, and there's also an EP called Love and Time. It was a collaboration with one of my friends in Canada called Steven Estrada. So that EP is waiting to be released, and it will be released quite soon.
So, and just kind of moving a little bit off topic, because now I don't know. Again, this is me being the ignorant American. I don't. I like, your English is pretty impeccable. Is that something that was like, your parents kind of had you learn English, or is that something that you took on yourself, or is that just kind of the school system out there?
It's mainly the school system in Slovakia.
Okay.
You have to learn English as soon as, well, in the kindergarten, they are trying to make you learn the English. So it's quite easy to pick up some English when you grow up in Slovakia. So it's quite easy.
Yeah, that's interesting, because as I'm in my early 30s, and just the idea of, like, I didn't start. I think it might be earlier now for the next generation of kids, but for me it was probably about 12 years old is when, like, we start, like, just sampling other languages.
And
then, like,
which language did you have to learn?
So the way my school did it is in 6th or 7th grade, so around that 11, 12, 13-year-old range, you are forced to take, they break it up into 3 sections throughout the year: Spanish, French, and German. And you do that for 3, I think you do that for all 3 years, or maybe it's, it was 1 year was French, 1 year was Spanish, 1 year was German. And then when you hit high school, junior high, 9th grade, you get to pick. You have to take a foreign language. So I ended up going Spanish, because it just seemed like, in the States, and back when I was in high school, my area was not, you didn't see secondary language signs anywhere that were English and then secondary Spanish. But now in in 2017, you're starting to see that even in Pennsylvania, which, for me is kind of abnormal, because Florida and, like, Southern California and Texas and the southern states, or the southern halves of states, have a lot of Spanish or Latino people there, because they're coming from Cuba or Mexico or wherever. But now, like, we are in 2017, I think it's just unofficially the Spanish seems to be, like, the second language for our country. So that was the reason I took Spanish, because it seemed like it would be pretty important. But it's not. And for me, it's not. It's just not part of my day-to-day life. But it sounds like other school systems in other countries are pretty. Because I know Germany is another one that does it, but they recognize that it's pretty important to pick up a second language, and it seems like it's always English, because I guess, you know, there's us, there's the UK, there's Canada, or at least parts of Canada, and it's always interesting because talking to people from other countries like yourself, because I never know what to expect, and it's like, I would say better than some people that I know that were born and raised in America.
So, and do you like Spanish?
I wasted my opportunity. With it, I took 5 years of it in a 4-year period, and I should be pretty fluent in it, but I never like followed through with it after high school, and I wouldn't say that I don't like it. I just don't. I barely understand any other language except English. I can pick up pieces of Spanish, and by that token, because like French has some similarities to Spanish, and so does Italian. There's key words that I can pick up in those 3 languages. But I guess I'm more neutral on it, because it's not something that I personally need to live my life or do my day-to-day job. So I want to. Now, I have 2 kids. I hope that they don't squander those opportunities. And I mean, my son's in kindergarten now. He just started this year, so it doesn't sound like that's part of the school year is learning a second language. But I think that they started up earlier than they did with me.
That sounds fine, actually.
Yeah, it's well. Do you? I mean, obviously, because you're looking to come to either England or America. Both have, you know, they both speak English. It's just variations of one another. So I assume like it's something that you are very, very grateful for, that you learned at such an early age, because you can go to, you know, Britain, or you can go to, you know, New York or LA or wherever you wanted to try to pick up a music career out in the States, and you'd be fine. Like, you'd be able to, like, do you struggle with anything in the English language?
Well, sometimes there are some words which I find hard to understand, but I usually can put together the pieces and communicate in English quite fluently. At least that's how I view it. And I also just attended the university, which is also being taught in English. So the English is quite easy for me. It's becoming quite easy for me, because I meet with English on day-to-day basis. So it's starting to be quite easy. Yeah.
Is that something that like your country just try, like, is that like kind of like the unofficial second language is English, so, you know, it's just around you all the time?
Yeah, I would say so, because even when you turn on the television, most of the ads are in English. They are just Slovak subtitles. So I'm not sure about the other cities around Slovakia, but at least in Bratislava, when you go to the city center, you can hear English more often than the Slovaks. So
interesting. Is that weird, or I guess you've been part of it for your entire life, so it's the norm?
I guess it's the norm, because well, it's weird for my parents and for my siblings, because they are older than me. But it's quite the norm for me, because I've heard and I was being taught English since my kindergarten years, so it's been quite norm for me.
So you come from like a kind of the first generation of, hey, it's important to learn English, so we're gonna start you out in kindergarten, which again is nuts to me. Like, I look at my son who's in kindergarten, and I can't imagine him even comprehending a second language yet.
Well, it was quite difficult, those first courses, because we were just little kids, and our parents had to pay for it, some amount of a fee, but it turned out okay eventually. because at least it was easier to pick from the English in the elementary school. It was quite
Mhm.
easier to continue the studying of English.
But so before, because we're nearing the end of our scheduled time here, I want to shift it back to music a little bit. So have you traveled at all? Like even within just your country, have you gone outside of your own city to perform at all?
Well, not yet because I still don't have a band.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would really like to plan a tour in the next few years. I would really like to tour Europe, but I don't know if it's a real dream or if it's just an illusion of that happening.
Well, you know, and as I mean, it sounds like you're a pretty young person, and I think this is like the time, like the next few years, this is the time for you to, like try to will it to happen, make it happen, live that musician on the road lifestyle where you're in your van or whatever, and because you can you can screw up and like I'm 33 and I feel like I'm still at a point in my life. It's a little bit different because I have kids, but I feel like a 33-year-old that doesn't have kids, that you can still take a wild chance, and if it doesn't work out, there's enough time to figure it out. There's enough time to make more money if you need to pay off some sort of debt that you accrued to try to make your dream happen. It's and this is I guess I come from a world of positivity. I don't know if you know who Kevin Smith is. He's a filmmaker, did Clerks, Chasing Amy, Dogma, but he's like kind of an inspiration for me, for just he's a big old ball of positivity, and it's just go do it. And it sounds like you're almost there. It sounds like you're just a couple steps away from getting to that point. Have you considered? And I don't know if this would work necessarily, or where you're at, but I think it would work. I know it would work in the States. I would imagine it would work in the UK. Have you considered like doing acoustic versions of your songs so that you could take them out more often than you do now?
Yes, certainly. But I still have to find some venues which would bring some opportunities for me. But definitely, this sounds like a great plan, and I would really like to make it happen.
And what's your dream tour? Is it States? Is it Europe? Is it somewhere else?
I would say that I would really like to tour around the US, but Europe would be also great. There are some.
It's
Yeah?
Yeah, I wonder if it's because I don't know if because you are much closer to. Well, okay, again, I'm just assuming because I'm not looking at a map and I don't know exact locations,
Yeah.
but I would imagine that you are closer to Europe. Well, is your country part of Europe or is it outside of Europe?
It's a part of Europe.
Okay. So you are much closer. You're in Europe. So I wonder if that, because for me, like the idea, and not that I would tour anything because I'm not a musician and or anything, but like the idea of like taking a road trip, that's I would like much rather try to figure out how to do it in Europe than the States. And I don't know if that's because I live in the States and Europe sounds so exotic. And maybe it's kind of the opposite for you. Like the States sounds exotic to you.
Well, the States sound exotic because I'm really keen on the American culture, the American sightseeing. I would really like to do all those things, but the thing is, the plane tickets are very expensive to the US. It costs around $1,000 just to get a ticket. So we'll see whether it happens one day. But I would really like to go across the US and tour some of the states, especially Philadelphia and New York and
Oh,
states
okay.
like these. But even
So is there anything like what's the number one thing that you would want to see in the United States?
probably the Statue of Liberty.
Okay. That's I feel like that's a go-to for a lot of people who are like first timers.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, that was the first time I went to New York. I never actually have gone to Ellis Island where the statue is, but the first time I ever went to New York, I was like driving there. My eyes were looking off the bridges, looking for the statue, and there's one of the bridges you can see it from. So I've never gone there. I've seen it from afar, but I've never actually gone myself. But even I would say that's about 10 years ago when the first time I went to New York. I was like, oh man, I would love to see the Statue of Liberty. So I think even for some Americans, that's a big touristy site. And I'll tell you what, when you make your way to the United States, if you get an opportunity to stop in Philly, don't go anywhere. If you're in New York, don't fall for their cheesesteaks. Their cheesesteaks are awful. When you come to Philly, make sure you go to the center of Philly and get yourself a good old Philadelphia cheesesteak. You'll be happy with that taste explosion.
Well, thank you for the tip.
All right, so before we let you go ahead and drop any kind of promotional things that you have, social media, where people can find your album. You know the lay of the land.
Yeah, well, my album is available on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, you name it, many of these digital outlets. It's been just today, the 9th of October, when the new 2017 remaster of my debut album came out called Autumn's Fall, and I'm also working on my second album called Memory Lane. So I'm really excited to let it release, and I think that some of you may like it. It's quite an alternative genre of music I'm doing. So.
Hey, well, I'll tell you what. If it's anything like what you described it to be, that alt rock scene, I know that's huge in Philly. The alt rock, the punk rock. That's it's and I imagine if it's huge in Philly, it's huge everywhere else as well. Where can people find you so that they can stay up to date with when these things are releasing?
Most of my posts are on Twitter, but I'm also on Facebook and Reverb Nation also.
All right, very cool. Steve, thank you for doing the show. It was a pleasure.
It was a great pleasure for me as well. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Make sure you check out Steven. We'll have links to all his social medias and where you can find his music in the show notes. Check it out. And if you like what you hear, make sure you buy it. Help get this kid to go on a European tour or on a United States tour. Get Steve to eat a cheesesteak. We need to make it happen. That's my goal as a Philadelphian, is to get everyone to eat a cheesesteak once.
Thank you so much.
Make sure you check out Everything is Awesome on awesomepodcast.com. We are also part of the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Real Awesome Pod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere that you can get a podcast, you can find us. And it would be a huge help. We say it all the time, a huge help if you just go on to our iTunes page and subscribe to it if that's where you listen to it. Leave a 5-star review so that we can get more people listening to this show. More people that listen to this show means the more things that we can do, like live shows and panel and con appearances and stuff like that. Before we officially leave, here's Steven's song, Follow Me, off his Volume 2 album, available now on Bandcamp.
It happened quite long ago, right in the middle of night. Back when it rained all day, the wind was blowing aloud. A strange figure in black, long in the distance from here. It turned out to be you. Everyone around me thinks I'm going crazy, but I always knew me, holding up a little sign of yours that reads follow me, 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 me. Somewhere out there far away, we can find ourselves a place called home. Follow me. I waited for an answer, but you were just standing still, speaking your words of wisdom that I just wish I could hear. The storm was getting stronger, and for a moment it seemed like you were coming near. Everyone around me thinks I'm going crazy, but it looks like you will never leave. You're looking right through me, you always look so lonely, holding up a little sign of yours that reads follow me, 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 me. Somewhere out there far away, we can find ourselves a place called home. Follow me. Big round eyes on a smile turn to gray. Morning fog disappears from the side. Follow me, 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 me. Somewhere out there far away, we can find ourselves a place called home. Somewhere out there far away, we can finally remain in peace. Follow me.
Once again, thanks to Steven for being on the show. For Everything is Awesome, I'm Kevin. You can find us on awesomepodcast.com and, of course, on the podcast network Core Temp Arts at coretemparts.com. We've been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Core Temp Arts shows, visit coretemparts.com.